Our next guest is former political prisoner David Johnson of the San Quentin Six. David, how are you?
I'm well.
Well, today is August 22nd. Yesterday was the assassination date of George Jackson, who was the field marshal of the Black Panther Party. He was assassinated at San Quentin Penitentiary in 1971. After he was assassinated, you were charged with a case. That's just a synopsis of what happened. Today, I want to go into depth and let's get the real story. What exactly happened that day and what can we gain from it? David Johnson, can you introduce who is George Jackson and what is Black August?
Well, George Jackson he emerged as being a spokesman for, conditions in prison and prisoners' rights. But long before the public became aware of who Comrade was, he was involved in the long struggle to, in some way, humanize the prisons in California. And for that, he became a target. And he kind of laid out in his first book, Soledad Brothers, just exactly what he was going through, what he went through, becoming a target, being the victim of, a lot of racist attacks by, racist inmates, and also by attacks by the prison administration for his stance and positions against the conditions that existed during those times, and which basically exist today. It's still conditions that dehumanize a person, and there's no efforts to rehabilitate or to give prisoners the opportunity to rehabilitate. They use budget cuts as a justification for not providing, adequate skills programs, job training programs, and academic programs.
George Jackson wrote 2 books, Soledad Brother and Blood in My Eye. Many look at those as Black revolutionary classics, especially the prison movement. Why is that?
Well, I think basically the most significant thing you can say about his writing is what he was attempting to do and did in a lot of ways succeed at, was getting prisoners to look at themselves, look at the conditions that they were subjected to, look at the conditions that brought them to prison, and, encourage them to make a transformation. Instead of, going back to the community as a predator, you go back to the community, you prepare yourself to go back to your communities, to be an asset to those communities, to help build those communities, as opposed to being a burden and a parasite on those communities. I think that's the most significant thing that he put forth, is to transform the criminal mentality to a more revolutionary mentality, and to be more productive, and positive, and in your thinking and what you want to do with your life and what you want to do for your community.
When you say revolutionary mentality, what do you mean? What kind of politics are you talking about?
It's in line with what was taking place all, across the board in this country. I mean, you had a civil rights movement, you had a movement for a nationalist movement which promoted, Black pride, particularly Black people, since, we've been degraded so much and taught to reject ourselves and our Blackness. And then, you had a revolutionary period, which was geared more toward changing the institutions and the politics of society, where, again, they're more humane, progressive, justice, equality becomes the central theme. Of course, during the civil rights movement, one of the big push was for black people to have the right to vote, because in the South, it wasn't until the 60s that a lot of black people were able to go to the polls and vote, which is today, they're trying to go back to the old days with, modern ways to disenfranchise us. Before, we were disenfranchised and subjected to slavery. Today, we're supposed to be free, but we want to legislate methods of disenfranchisement.
Let's go back to August 21st, 1971. Can you tell us what exactly happened inside of San Quentin prison?
Well, basically, like I said, the Department of Corrections had a long history of trying to silence, what I'll use dissidents or of the revolutionary voice within the prison system. And George had a revolutionary voice. And, like I said, and the public became aware of the conditions that were going on inside. And, they've been trying to assassinate him for a long time. And on the 21st, they put in motion a plan, and they were successful at assassinating George. And out of that was the fact that, well, you can look at it like this. The situation got out of their control. 3 guards, 2 white inmates got killed. Somebody had to be held responsible for that. They had already succeeded in assassinating George. But how are you going to justify to the public the death of 3 guards and 2 white inmates? Somebody had to be held accountable for that. You couldn't just let that go. And as a result of that, 6 of us were chosen to be indicted for that. Ultimately, when we went to trial, we got acquitted of all the charges. Well, I got convicted of an assault. But, we got acquitted. Most of us got acquitted of all the charges that were brought against us. Hugo Pennell, along with me, got convicted of assault. And they used the conspiracy theory to convict Spain on a murder, which, eventually was overturned and he was acquitted. So the central theme of the indictment against us, we all were acquitted of. But nobody was held accountable for the murder of George. And even to this day, no one will be held accountable for the murder of George.
Can you talk about the political imprisonment of Hugo Pennell, who you've alluded to, as well as Ruchell Magee?
Well, Ruchell Magee, played a central role in helping us file motions necessary to stop them from railroading us like they wanted to, which allowed us to be able to secure attorneys of our choice.
When you say us, you mean the San Quentin 6?
Right. Because like I said earlier, 6 of us were chosen to be indicted for the crimes that occurred on that day. And Ruchell helped us file motions to stop the process so we could, obtain, legal representation that we felt was adequate for us and could represent, the political position that we had taken in, fighting the conditions and political malfeasance that was taking place in the California prison system. And Hugo is, like I said, they used a 4500 to give him, an assault conviction, but with that assault conviction came a life top. And once again, the political corruption that exists, Hugo is still doing time in spite of a spotless disciplinary record. So, he is receiving no justice. But there's still a fight and a movement to secure his release from prison, because he's got more than enough time served for the crimes that he was charged with. But there again, because of his life top, they're using that to continue to hold him.
You said because of his what? His life
He
top?
he has a life top. Like he has like a sentence from 9 to life or 6 to life, which means they can hold you from anywhere to 6 months to life. And so because of that, because he has a life top, that gives them justification to continue to deny him parole. But what I'm saying is he has a spotless disciplinary record, but in spite of his spotless record, they still continue to deny him parole.
Definitely. We encourage people to look into the cases of Ruchell Magee, Hugo Pennell, and so many other political prisoners.
Right, because they're, again, like I said, those truly are considered political prisoners, because the only reason they're still held in captivity is not because they're not doing or bringing to the board a clean disciplinary record, but because of the politics of the system.
Can you talk a little bit about lessons learned from the prison movement of the 60s and 70s? And do you think it relates to the prison movements that are going on in Georgia, Ohio, as well as the California prison movement that has been heating up over the last 2 years?
Of course. Everybody's been impacted by, what took place then and continue to be impacted today. Me personally, I think that all the rights that were won in court then, about representation at your disciplinary hearings, the abolishment of the indeterminate sentence. The prison system has found ways to circumvent, the gains that have been made. And I guess the lesson to be learned is you can't rest on small victories. The war is still going on to, like I said, to bring humanity into the system so that society won't be afraid to let people out of prison, giving prisoners an opportunity to rehabilitate themselves and to at least show or make an effort to come out of that a better person than what they went in. But as it stands now, people are going into prisons and coming out worse than when they went in there. It's like Frankenstein and his monster. And until you humanize the system, you're going to always tear down and destroy a person's humanity. And that was one of the big struggles that we had when years ago when we were there. Our saying was, no matter what you do to me, you're not going to take away my humanity. So, say, be like the will of the wind. It's all right to bend, but don't break.
Yes,
and
sir.
a lot of our humanity is being taken away, on a lot of different levels.
What is the importance of people supporting prisoners as well as political prisoners specifically? Why is that important in today's times?
Well, I think one of the most important things, particularly, well, I'm just say political prisoners in general. One of the reasons that they should be supported is because they made sacrifices, and some of them are still suffering as a result of those sacrifices, not for personal gain, but to build a better world, to build a more equitable and just society. And like I said, we have to determine who are our political prisoners, because under the standard that's set in this country, everything that you do, even in opposition to, government practices that you find to be reprehensible, is considered a crime. So it's incumbent upon us to recognize the distinction between common criminals and crimes that are being committed against people for political gains.
This Black August, as a comrade of George Jackson, somebody who knew the man and somebody who also worked with formations that he worked with in the prison movement,
Mm-hmm.
what should we remember about George? What should we remember about Jonathan, Katari, and all the people who are martyrs of the prison movement?
Well, I'll reiterate what I just said. Those people were making sacrifices to build a more equitable and just society. And like I said, not only them, but, historically speaking, that's what Black August is about. See, Black August, when you look at Black August, you don't look at individuals. A lot of individuals want to take credit for the formation of Black August. But a lot of those individuals didn't make any sacrifices. None of them made sacrifices in the Haitian Revolution. None of them made sacrifices during the Watts riots. None of them made sacrifices at the courthouse. But those sacrifices were made by those individuals and groups of individuals to better the masses as a whole. You know what I'm saying? Nat Turner, like I said, the comrade, because their efforts were bigger than themselves. They were making sacrifices for a greater good.
Yes, sir.
The advancement of all humanity, not for personal gain. And without them and the sacrifices of countless others, there'd be no Black August.
Although we call this Black August, can you talk about the gains that the Black prison movement made across ethnic lines?
Well, I think one of the things it is to understand, and I think that was one of the strong points, George was trying to emphasize, and most revolutionaries emphasize, that it's a struggle about all people, not one group of people. Revolution encompasses the whole of society. It cuts across, color lines, cultural lines. It's about the people, no matter what your color or race is. Like I said, George's emphasis was no matter whether you're black, Mexican, white, you're still affected. We're all affected by the injustices that's being perpetrated in this system. And the only way we're going to be able to change this is if we unite and come together. The same principle applies to society at large. The only way we're going to make any progressive changes is if we unite and move as a people, to use an old term, to build a united front against injustice in humanity.
For those that are just tuning in, you are listening to the voice of David Johnson, a former political prisoner with the San Quentin 6 case. David Johnson, can you tell us, just throw out some of the things that you, George, and other comrades that was in the prison movement, what are some of the things that you guys used to study so that people could get a better grasp on society from the revolutionary perspective that you guys were pushing it from?
Well, we studied economics, we studied, political theory, we studied philosophy. We read the writings of a lot of revolutionary leaders, Mao Zedong, Che Guevara, Lenin, Marx, and then, philosophy, Kant, Spinoza, Plato, Socrates,
Frantz Fanon.
Like I said, we studied a lot. then that's part of evolving as a human being to understand, politics, philosophy, economics, and being able to develop the analytical tools to make good, sound decisions. As you move through life and society in general. You might say we're honing ourselves to become professional revolutionaries. And instead of using that term, I'd probably say we were honing ourselves to be good human beings. So that, if you coming from the perspective of being a good human being, then everything that flows from that is going to be good. Your politics, your philosophy, your spiritual awareness, and what you put forth is going to be good. That's the bottom line. We can use the term revolutionary, but the bottom line is when you cut through it all, the bottom line is you be a good human being. Good human beings build good, humane societies.
What could people outside of the prison system do to help prisoners in general as well as political prisoners? What do you recommend?
Well, you got to stay vigilant. It's not only prisons. You got to have watchdogs on all the institutions of this society, because all across the board, it's not just prisons. All across the board, they're introducing legislations that in some way curtails our basic freedoms. We're in a very revisionist period, and in a dangerous time, because even though we say we have the right to vote, and democracy is here, but then at the same time, the system finds ways to take away our rights. And we have to be vigilant and challenge those attempts on every front, whether it's in prison, whether it's in Congress, in City Hall, the county courthouse. We got to challenge them at every level, so, to let them know we're not just going to sit idly by and let you do that to us. If we don't, then, we're doomed to continue to be enslaved and oppressed.
For those that are just tuning in, you were just listening to the voice of David Johnson, former political prisoner of the San Quentin Six, and also comrade of George Jackson, who we were talking about today, along with the prison movement of the 60s and today. Well, thank you, David Johnson, for being with us.
Okay.
All
Thank
power
you for
to the
having
people.
me.
No problem.
And I hope I've shed some light on the conditions that exist. Whatever methodology we use, I can't give you specifics. I won't give you specifics. But what I will say is we have to devise ways and means to liberate ourselves and prevent ourselves from being further subjugated and oppressed and having our rights taken away from us.
Thank you.
Okay, brother. Peace.
Peace.